Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I just had an idea, a thought experiment I thought up. And let's draw this perhaps. It was quite a profound idea. I mean, you can think this through with me. Let's suppose there's a mouse. We've got a mouse inside of a type of maze, I suppose, or a prison. But now there's two paths out, A and B. Now A is very easy. A is a very easy path, but at the end of it, it gets shocked. Let's put some zaps there. In contrast, B is a very it's like a maze. It's extremely complicated. It's got very hard bits it needs to go through. But ultimately, it leads out. Ultimately, it gets him into bed. Now, what's going to happen? Well, maybe it goes down A. Nice and easy, takes a stroll down, but boom, gets zapped. Now, nothing which exists likes pain. That's essentially an axiom of consciousness. So it goes back, and it doesn't want to do that. But then it goes down B. In fact, let's even make this, let's up the stakes a bit. Let's say that there's actually some food here. So there's some immediate gratification the mouse has, if you can kind of see where this is going. Whereas in B, it's much harder to find any food. There's not much gratification, but ultimately gets him out of there. Now what's going to happen? Of course, A is quite a nice path. You get a few treats, but you get zapped and you don't want to do that again. So let's try B. B's hard. You make a bit of progress, but the first obstacle which comes, probably turn back. And you try A again, but boom, you get zapped. Maybe you try nothing, but another axiom of consciousness is that a mind will never, ever rest in boredom. So doing nothing is never an option. You'll never find that to be the case. And so it's going to take time, right? And let's say we have an infinite amount of time for this experiment. So now it's going to probably keep hitting A many, many times. Because it keeps getting zapped. The more it gets zapped, the more it learns its lesson that A is not the path. And the more it learns its lesson that B has to be the path. But B is very difficult and it keeps getting stuck and there's obstacles and there's a maze and it has to learn. But it keeps learning. And yes, it will probably keep hitting A again and again, but it's learning. Every time it makes a mistake, it's learning. Now, as time increases, as it stretches off into infinity, what happens? If we continue this experiment for an infinite amount of time, eventually the mouse will escape. Eventually the mouse will break out of its ego, out of its own maze. I don't know how long it's going to be. It will be different for each mouse, different according to each maze. But eventually every mouse in this experiment will get out. And that bodes well for us. We'll make mistakes many times, but the mistake leads to something bad. We get zapped. The feeling that we don't like it. As long as the zap is there, as long as the basic mechanism of this maze is in place, that is, going down A is bad. There has to be some negative reaction there. As long as that one principle is in place, that going down the dead end leads to some pain. It leads to a feeling that I do not like this and I do not want this. As long as that is there, I do not want A. And it's complicated because A does give some immediate gratification. But ultimately, I want will prevail. Ultimately, everyone gets what they want, as long as that is truly what you want. And it may barely be the case that path B, your desire for freedom, outweighs your desire for immediate gratification only barely. As long as it does, even by a hair's length, an atom's weight, you will escape and you will be free. Now, the parallel to our lives is obvious, and I will not focus on that, but I will emphasize that one principle. All we need is to want what we want, more than our wanting what we don't want. There's actually a saying of the Prophet, upon him be peace. Let me look this up actually. Yes, here it is. As he said, upon him be peace, لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى يكون هواه تبعا لما جئت به. That none of you truly believeth until his desire is in accordance with what I have brought. Till his true desire, yearning and passion, we might even translate it as lust, the thing we really viscerally want. That is belief. That is salvation. No matter how many mistakes we make, belief is that our heart is always on the right path. And that belief alone, just that belief, will lead to salvation. And I suppose that's the meaning of the soteriological concept of intercession, the Prophet's shifa'ah, that he can intercede and bring one with him to heaven. But we need that one principle of desire, that we check our desires and that they are actually in accordance with path B, the path of salvation, the path of the right, not the path of the left, as easy as it is to follow immediate sensory gratification, to follow our whims and our caprices and our lusts. We know it lands to a bad place. We know we get zapped when we do it. The zap is the voice of the spirit, which knows it's wrong. It's the heart which is not dead. As long as the heart is alive, that will lead us to salvation. And that's the only principle, but beware, beware, beware. If the heart dies, if we no longer feel that moral disgust for what is wrong, the experiment plays it quite differently, then it's quite possible for the mouse to become trapped in a perpetual cycle of path A again and again and again. And that is the definition of hell, to be trapped in an endless loop forever. So the only work we need to do, the only thing which is necessary for us to do, is to keep the heart alive. And the easiest way to do that, without actually shocking ourselves, and physical mortification is certainly nothing I would ever recommend, is the practice of what we would call in Arabic muhasabah. Muhasabah. That means to take oneself to account. I think it's a bit more than mindfulness meditation. It's because, well, mindfulness meditation, muraqabah, doesn't necessarily have, I mean, we can be completely mindful of our thoughts without judging them, and that's the idea. We're not supposed to judge them. But the idea of muhasabah is that we do judge them. Were they in alignment with God or not? Now, we do not judge our judging, if that makes sense. We judge with the judgment of God, not with the judgment of the ego. That's why it's a spiritual practice and not an egotistical practice. Muhasabah is not to say that I don't like this, it's to say that God does not like this. The absolute consciousness does not like this. And therefore, my consciousness should be in alignment with the divine. My will should be in alignment with the divine, because then it is real. Otherwise, it can and will lead to hell. This practice of muhasabah, if we do nothing but that alone, it will lead us to heaven by the will of God and by His grace. So I shall leave this video here, but I think we've opened up a path where it would be good in future videos to speak about muhasabah and muraqabah and the practices of meditation and mindfulness in some more detail. And I look forward to meeting you all again at that point.